I can't help but think if I was a major and looking at Canada, that I wouldn't be watching what we're doing, because as I think we'll do, is we're starting to get the idea on the characteristics that we're looking for. We're going to start breaking this property open.
The Financial Survival Network. Now more than ever. The Financial Survival Network.
And welcome. This is Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. We are pleased today to be getting a sponsor update from Fury Gold Mines and CEO Tim Clarke and SVP of Exploration Brian Atkinson with us today. Tim, the news just keeps flowing here. I mean, I'm trying to keep up with it, but coming after 22, you're really off on 2023. You're off with a bang.
Yeah, look, it was a great year last year. I think the stock finally recognized that, and but I think I'm more excited about this year because one is we're starting the year well financed. We've got over $9 million in the treasury. If we need money at some point, the lockup does come off at Dolly Varden technically on the 25th of February. We don't have any plans of selling that stock, though. We think it's going a lot higher. We're big supporters, but at the same time, we've been getting not only great drill results, but I think more importantly, I'll let Brian sort of let it shine, but our hit ratio is definitely demonstrating that the learning curve is really starting to catch up. Technically, we're doing well in several different spots on the Eau Claire and the Percival, kind of demonstrating this. Plus, we've also done a lot of sort of work in bringing up things on the pipeline, and we've spent money on geochem studies and geophysical studies, and we're starting to see more on the property that I think lends itself to bigger companies coming in here and looking at the size of our property, and the potential along the Cannard deformation zone is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, and obviously you're constrained as to what you can talk about as far as companies in discussions with Fury. But Brian, in the Hinge zone, you got a pretty impressive 55% hit rate. Are you doing something different than you were before? How have you done that? I mean, it looks like you've tied together the geophys, the channel samplings, and the drilling, and then finally actually drilling in the correct place.
Yeah, it's a combination of that, and our technical team, it's dogged sort of disciplined approach to it, and taking in all the data, compiling it all, using it all from a multidisciplinary approach, not just the geochem and gold intercepts, but looking at geophysics and using that in the third dimension, and being able to target out from that, and just gaining an overall better understanding on what's controlling the mineralization at the Eau Claire deposit.
And you hit some real high grade. Had some real high grade hits there. 22 grams per ton over 1.5 meters, 6.3. I mean, the last 3 holes of the results of the program really didn't disappoint. They were like the grand finale there.
Yeah, definitely. No, it was really good success out there, and we're seeing the grades and stacked zones. So just in the process of modeling that all out, and we're seeing nice stacked zones. We're seeing continuity of these veins across 500 meters of strike and over 600 meters down dip. So, this is a real area where we can go and add, a significant mineralization and hopefully a resource update towards the end of the year or early next year.
I'm glad you raised that point. So, Tim, a resource update we can look forward to later in the year.
Well, look, I think we've had this out here for a long time. It's been since 2018, and we're sitting at 1,000,003 ounces, and we've been adding for the last couple of years. I think with a really good, solid execution this summer, we could show a pathway pretty damn close to 2 million ounces, and that's the kind of time you want to put some numbers around it and get a resource update. So that's something I think investors should look forward to.
All right. So sometime later in the year, we'll see an updated resource estimate. And based on the results that we've seen over the last drill program, which I think you drilled 17,500 meters. Is that correct, Brian?
Yeah, right around 17,000 meters. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got a lot to show for it. Like, one nice thing when you see that hit rate, you see that the money is going where it needs to go and it's earning a return effectively.
Yeah, and Kerry, I think it's also important to point out, like, we did a lot of marketing the last week or two, and I think a lot of people remember the old East Main Company and even the old Fury. That number of 55% hit ratio on Eau Claire, historically, I believe it was like 35%, and that was on the resource. We're stepping out and getting that. It's a major change, and I think that the big takeaway too for me is we need to get out there and actually circle back to a lot of the investors who remember the old company, because this is a much more efficient company. I mean, think about it. We closed the Dolly Varden deal last year. We closed the Newmont with the joint venture. We sold some small assets. We brought on not one, but two strategic investors with a producer and a large institutional account, raised almost $20 million. The stock price is lower than it was a year ago. We were at 91 cents on January 1st, and we're sitting here at 82 cents. This is a screaming deal, and not to mention gold's higher, and Dolly Varden position is massively higher. And Dolly Varden is in a huge opportunity to get taken out at some point. And I got to point out, with Newmont making a bid for Newcrest, and then we had B2 Gold bidding on Sabina up in the Arctic. Fury, if you look at a map, is literally right in the middle of this potential food fight. And if you're thinking that Newmont could be doing more consolidation around the world, and especially I think Canada is a heated up area for consolidation. Fury sits right between these districts. We've got a 300-kilometer project up near Nunavut, up near Agnico, and up near where they just made that acquisition. That's going to get more valuable. The whole property around around James Bay, because of the hydro, the infrastructure, the power, to me, it just makes sense that the natural mean is for all this to get consolidated. So we're sitting here and we're advancing our projects. We're undervalued on the stock price. We're getting out there doing more marketing. We're going to do a resource update at the end of the year, and things are getting better. So I keep telling investors, put a little bit of money in here if you're not sure about Fury, but take a look at it, because we've got Dolly Varden's worth over 60. If that thing gets bought out, it's going to be worth almost as much as our company combined. So there's a lot of safety net in that. And again, we're moving and we're having success. So we'd love them to join in and take a look.
So speaking of Dolly Varden, that's gone up quite a bit recently. So basically, the company, when you add the cash and the Dolly Varden, it's trading for a little bit more than it was when we last spoke, I think in October, but still dramatically nowhere near what it's worth in light of the prospects, in light of potential 2 million ounces of gold here in Eau Claire, plus the adjoining projects.
Well, Dolly Varden, we've got 59.5 million shares, and you can go out and add that up. It was sitting at a $26 million market value in September. And then we took out another 7 million of that, of which we already got 5 in cash for the deal. So effectively that went from 26 million, and now we're sitting at, I think it's 61 or 62 million in just Dolly Varden deal alone. That's showing a lot of success. As Brian would point out, ironically, we're having as equal success on the drill bit as they are. But because I think it's silver and, there is a major that's surrounding that property, it looks exciting as a possible takeout. If there is a takeout, you're going to get a premium of 20 or 30% probably. And if it's not the major, I think there's other companies out there. Silver is hard to find. I mean, it's hard to find these new big silver veins. It's harder than the gold. So I think there's potential upside there for us. And that makes us completely unique among the juniors. And then when you flip over to our side, we have Newmont owns some of us. and as well as Agnico owns some of us. And our property up in Committee Bay, it isn't a stretch that these bigger companies are going to consolidate within this industry. And the first place you want to do it is either in Canada or Australia because of the geopolitical safety net. And I think if you're making an 18-month bet on gold and you think gold's going higher, why wouldn't you want to buy a junior company? And if you're buying a junior company, two things you need. One is a treasury, and the other is a good management team that's going to execute and deploy that money thoughtfully and have relationships with potential buyers. And I think if you go down that list, it's a pretty short list, but Fury's on it. And for that reason, I think that at 82 cents, I bought some a couple of weeks ago. I'm telling my friends to buy more. It's a great price.
Brian, you found 6 targets along the Cannard deformation zone at Clarke. And so, I mean, it's almost like you've got too many things to go after here. You've just been finding gold right and left, and now there's more. So at some point, you're going to want to take a look at that, think about drilling it, right?
Yeah, our whole premise as we go forward is moving things through the pipeline. So this year the focus was on Eau Claire and Percival. And, I think continued focus will be on those two, given the success that we had. But at Percival, we've got another 14 anomalies out there to look at from the biogeochemistry there. And, they look very similar geologically, geochemically, and geophysically to what we see at Percival. And then with this new study that we just completed out at Clarke along the Cannard, where 95% of our known gold occurrences within our 55,000 hectare project sit, it's just a logical place to look next. The early stage still, some additional follow-up needed, but just advancing these things through the pipeline so that we can get them to the drill ready stage at some point here will be interesting. But again, focus this year, the Percival is more advanced than the targets around there, and then we'll go in and sort of boots on the ground and follow up on these new anomalies that we've just put out.
And Tim, I just want to go back to something you said about geopolitical, about acquisitions focused on Australia and Canada. So of course, geopolitical important, but even within Canada, Quebec is the premier mining jurisdiction in the country, sure in North America.
It sure is. They really the government supports it quite a bit, and even if you want to get into raising money, they give a big major tax break for companies in Quebec, and you want to take advantage of that. And so they want to see us successful. And I think that if you're, I think it's probably basically Australia and Quebec are probably the two most prolific areas in terms of that. And we're right in the middle of it, and we've got a big land package right next to a major.
So right now, my understanding is you're working on the budget, setting up the drill program for this year. When are we going to know more about that?
Well, we're going to get that out in a couple of weeks. But look, we've got enough money for this year to do the project. And we just got to basically get it through the board, and we'll get it out to everybody. But we're planning on starting in March. We've got contracts already in place, and we're excited to get going and keep advancing these projects. I think, we're on a cusp of what I think could be a really good breakout year for us. We've laid a lot of good groundwork, and I think this latest press release in terms of Clarke and the 6 anomalies we've added there. It's just when you look at the page and you see all the 95% of the drilling down in the far left side of our property, and you see this Cannard deformation zone that goes on for 100 miles, and we have a third of it. I can't help but think if I was a major and looking in Canada, that I wouldn't be watching what we're doing, because as I think we'll do is we're starting to get the idea on the characteristics that we're looking for. We're going to start breaking this property open.
Speaking of that 100-mile, over 100-kilometer area for the Cannard deformation zone, Brian, do you think it's consistent, the deposits throughout from what you've looked at so far, or are there going to be zones that you're going to focus on first?
Yeah, there's going to be zones we focus on. In 2021, we focused close to Eau Claire. So it was Eau Claire and Snake Lake, which also sits along it. And then we did some regional work out on, Clovis and a couple of the other prospects that sit along it. But, we've got Percival, we've got these new anomalies out in Clarke. So it's not consistent across it. We found targeted areas where we like the geophysical signature and the underlying geology of it. And that's what focused this year's, our 2022's work. And as we go forward, we're going to just, as we're doing sampling and getting results in, we're learning as we go. And that's helping us, focus even better and get closer to that, putting that drill bit in some of these new prospects.
All right. Well, that's encouraging. And Tim, it's the way you've laid things out. It's basically that Fury is in a far stronger position than virtually any other company its size, certainly in Canada, but in the world. I mean, look, like the sector's been depressed for years.
Yep.
You've managed to stay well capitalized. So now that it's coming back to life, apparently, you're uniquely situated.
Look, I took this job, as I said on this interview before, because I knew that there was a high likelihood that we'd be able to sell the Dolly Varden or our homestake to Dolly Varden to monetize that to finance what we had. And being in Canada was extremely attractive, and it's going to pay dividends. And I like the fact that it's got big properties. And I think that's where you as these bigger companies are, it's going to, like, this consolidation is coming. It's game on. It's like, so we got B2 Gold buying Sabina. We got Newmont buying Newcrest. It's like the light switches on with all the bankers in the industry right now. We're heading down to the BMO conference pretty soon, and then to PDAC. There should be a lot of meetings and a lot of chatter about this stuff because people are going to be scrambling and they're going to come running into the room trying to make sure they got a chair and they don't get left without one, because if you don't get bigger, your costs overrun you and things like that. And there's real leverage now and confidence because people feel the gold market is starting to come back. As much as gold prices languished here, and I could see it going down a little bit lower before it goes a lot higher, but if you don't believe in gold right now, then why would you even be looking at the space? And if you do believe in gold, you want to be leveraged with the right players. And I think that as Fury is situated, it's not only just we've got what we need, but it's a completely restructured story with new management that's really turned things around in the last year and a half. And from a mismanaged where you had a lot of misdrilling, data being left on the floor, overpaying for things, all that's been washed out and gone away. And the first people that figure out how cheap Fury still is, the guys who bought it back to run it back up to 92 are the guys who already owned it buying more. We just got to go out there and get the guys who forgot about it back in the name. And this stock should be a lot higher than it is today.
Okay. And a rising gold market, approaching $2,000 gold could be just a catalyst that will bring that about. So, well, gentlemen, appreciate your being on. Hey, go over to the company website, furygoldmines.com, sign up for notifications so you'll hear the latest on drill results and company information. And of course, the symbol is Fury, Fury, in the US and Canada. Tim, Brian, thanks so much for coming on. We'll touch base with you again soon.
Kerry, always great to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry.
The Financial Survival Network.